Membership is, first of all, you have a membership mindset as an organization, which is the organization is treating this group of people like they're going to be around for a long time. And since they're going to be around for a long time, what are the implications for the products, for the way we talk to them, for the way we treat them, for the way we charge them?
Welcome to the AttractionPros podcast, where professionals in the attractions business can get tips, tools, and even a bit of inspiration.
Join us as we tackle some of the most important topics facing the attractions industry today and gain insights from some of the top leaders, creators, and influencers from the exciting world of theme parks, zoos, museums, aquariums, and family entertainment centers.
Because this show is created by Attraction Pros for Attraction Pros. I am Josh Liebman, Director of Business Development for Amusement Advantage. I help attractions understand and improve their guest experience.
And I'm Matt Heller, founder of Performance Optimist Consulting. I help leaders lead and work with attractions to increase employee engagement and retention.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and enjoy the leading resource for attractions industry professionals, the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going great, Josh. I hear there's something exciting happening tomorrow, which will be way after this airs, but
last Wednesday. Yes. For those of you who might be watching this, all of the hair that I have at the top of my head here that has been growing at a very rapid rate for the past 3 months is getting chopped off, and I'm very excited for it.
So that's a reason for people to watch instead of just listen to the podcast, which if you don't know and you're listening, we are now releasing the video of our podcast as well on YouTube.
So now you can see us asking questions and talking to each other in addition to listening.
That's right. And you can see the mountain of hair on Josh's head.
Right. That will be gone by the time this airs.
And when this airs, we'll be talking to someone pretty fascinating.
That's right. That's right. Robbie Kellman Baxter is an expert on membership and subscription models. She claims to be an accidental membership expert when she was doing some work with Netflix several years ago. But nowadays, she is the go-to guru when it comes to everything related to membership and subscription in Silicon Valley. So it'll be really interesting to talk about how a lot of those companies implement memberships and subscriptions, and how us in the attractions industry are able to take a lot of those components and implement that into our operations and marketing initiatives as well.
Yeah, you know, what I'm really interested to talk to her about is we've heard this process of membership for a long time, right? Zoos, aquariums, science centers, a lot of them have memberships, and Six Flags started doing memberships. But I think what's really interesting is it's not just another way to charge people for their experiences, right? It's not just say, hey, we're going to give you a membership or do a membership so we can charge you every month or something, right? There's so much more that goes into it. There's a deeper thought process and even a mindset that she talks about. And I'm really interested to talk about how that is actually a culture shift within an organization, not just a pricing structure shift.
Right. And in fact, that membership and subscriptions, yes, they have a lot in common. A lot of times those words are used interchangeably, but we'll be able to learn about really what the differences between those are as it relates to that mindset shift and that cultural component of it too. And like you said, it's not just about pricing. So this isn't just about marketing. That's obviously a huge component of it, but we tie in other departments that we regularly see within attractions between operations as well as product development and everything that we are doing to best serve our guests in the best ways possible.
Yeah. And that all kind of comes together under the umbrella of what she calls the forever transaction, right? If everybody is thinking that this guest is someone that we want to have come back here forever, for every one of their milestone events in their life, or, when their guests come to town, we want them to think of us, that kind of forever transaction, that forever relationship. Again, it's a very different mindset. And I can't wait to talk to her about kind of how we in the attractions industry can apply that.
Well, I'd say let's wait no longer and let's get to this amazing conversation with Robbie Kellman Baxter.
Robbie Kellman Baxter, expert in membership and subscription models and author of the Forever Transaction. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing?
Doing really well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing well, doing well. You know, we're recording this during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're hoping that people will listen to this many, many years in the future. But that kind of how are you question's a little odd. But I'm doing very well and super excited to talk to you today.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first of all, Robbie, we are here for the education and inspiration for people in the attractions business, and I know some of them have taken on membership models. Can you first of all just kind of tell us about membership models in general and sort of your background and philosophy on that subject?
Yeah, sure. So I'm sort of an accidental membership expert. About I want to say like 17 years ago, I'd been a consultant for a while, and I started to consult for Netflix, working with them on their on some of their acquisitions. And I fell in love with the business model. I loved that they did one thing really well, right? Professionally created collection of video content delivered with cost certainty in the most efficient way possible. And they kept it really clear and simple what that promise was to their customers, and they just kept improving on it. And in return, they enjoyed this predictable recurring revenue and a really high retention rate. And as I was falling in love with that model, all the different elements and how they all work together and the impact that it had on the way the product was designed, the way they marketed, the way that they recognized revenue, everybody else was falling in love with it too. And I started getting calls from people who said, hey, we want to be like Netflix. We heard you worked with Netflix. We want to be the Netflix of news or software or bicycles or dental pain management products. You name it, someone wanted to Netflix it. And so I've been kind of working in that area for a long time, and started to develop frameworks to help organizations understand what could be borrowed from, let's say, a Netflix or a Spotify or a SurveyMonkey or a Slack, or you kind of fill in the blank, and what was unique to each industry. And I started to realize that almost any industry could apply these principles that start with a forever promise that they're making to their customer. What is the goal we're helping you achieve, or the problem we're solving for you forever, that justifies the kind of trust that is required for recurring revenue?
Robbie, I'm curious. You said it can be applied to just about any industry. So curious to hear, what is the pushback maybe from people or from businesses that would say, this won't work in my business, or this won't work in my industry, even if they have later seen the light towards being able to implement a membership or subscription model?
Yeah, it's such a good question, Josh. So 5 years ago, I wrote The Membership Economy, my first book. And I wrote it because I was seeing that it could work for virtually any organization. And I was getting tons of pushback where people would say, that must be really interesting that you work with subscriptions and memberships. That doesn't really work for our business because we have physical products. And how could you have a subscription to physical products? Or our business is about experiences. You can't subscribe to an experience. Or our subscription is to a special occasion, so it doesn't happen enough, it's not frequent enough to justify a subscription. Or we actually go through a third party, and if we went, having a subscription requires going direct, which would put us in competition with our most important partners. So those were a few of the cases for pushback, but there were all kinds, and that's really why I wrote the book, to say, look, this works for almost any industry, almost any size organization, almost any kind of org structure: public, private, venture-backed, bootstrap, nonprofit, solopreneur, and here's why it's so valuable.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really caught Josh and I's attention as you were talking about, memberships for all kinds of different businesses, is that there are some entities in the attraction world, and I think of zoos and aquariums that have memberships, right, that allow them access to the facilities, and there's some VIP benefits, but a lot of other attractions are really adopting this as well. And I'm curious, what are some things that you see as sort of the keys to entry, right? If someone is considering, hey, I think we have enough for a promise here in a forever transaction, but what are those things that we need to be considering before we jump into that pool?
Yeah. So the first thing you actually identified, Matt, which is you have to have enough value to justify a forever transaction. If I offer, if I offer training for how to potty train your child, that is not a forever transaction, right? That's going to be maybe 3 weeks, and then you're going to cancel your subscription because hopefully you've solved the problem. So you have to think really long term. So for example, maybe I joined the zoo because knowing how animals behave and seeing them behave is something that brings me great joy, or because I want to have a place to connect as a family around, animals or nature. A bigger goal than I want to have a fun Saturday. That's probably the first thing. I think nonprofits sometimes have it easier because they usually are organized around a mission. They already have it's much easier to create a forever promise from a mission. We're going to, protect wildlife by building fans and supporters among the people of our community. Right. So that says, well, great. So we're going to have a zoo with animals, but we're also going to have educational programs. We're also going to go out into the community. We're also going to ask you to donate money. We're also going to have fundraisers. So, they can start to layer in value around achieving that goal. The only difference between, I think, a mission and a forever promise is a mission is from the organization's perspective. This is what we're doing. And a forever promise is this is what we're doing for you. So why am I a member? Because they're doing this for me. And when you get into the kind of, more pure amusement, more pure entertainment, that's completely possible to have a subscription, but that promise has to be something that's big enough that it justifies a long-term relationship. And the offering itself has to justify it. So I know many theme parks and attractions are seasonal. So what's the justification for subscribing in the off season? You have to think that through. And also a lot of times in an attraction, people might get tired. They say, well, I've used up all the value. I've been on that ride a dozen times. It's no longer, my kids don't want to go anymore. So you have to make sure that the product, the offering itself is big enough to justify somebody staying through the off season and for the out years.
And that was going to be my next question, because you said you have to have enough value to offer the forever transaction, but that value itself also needs to be something that can't be exhausted. So if you look at something like, like theme parks or attractions or zoos, they can run into this issue of been there, done that, along with, many other businesses. So, aligning that value is continually refreshing it. And I'm guessing there's no business or industry that can have this set it and forget it type of membership and subscription, that they need to continually be adding value to it.
Right. Absolutely. One of the really important things in any kind of subscription model is on whoever the product team is, whether that's designing new attractions or updating the software or adding new items to the menu. You have to keep evolving it for a bunch of reasons. One of them is you don't want your customer to ever get to the point where they say, I've used it all up. I've watched every video. I've ridden every ride 10 times, that kind of a thing. But you also want to grow with them. So a lot of times that forever promise is about growth and learning. And so they'll say, well, I've learned everything I can learn from you. So you have to keep pushing the envelope on the sophistication of what you offer. And you also have to keep in mind, I always say, you want to look at your offering with your microscope to make sure that it's completely meeting the needs of today's members. But also you want to look through your telescope and say, what's going on the horizon that my prospective members are going to be considering when they decide whether or not to join. So that might be, there are better ways for me to enjoy it. If my forever promise is about learning about animals and I was doing the zoo, and then I find out that there's actually this fabulous farm where I can go and be close with the animals and I can live there and my kids can have these experiences raising those animals. I'm making this up. I might say, well, the zoo is sort of so-so. Or if everything is live streamed or, so you want to know what else is being offered to make sure that you are continuing to deliver in the best way on your promise, and that you haven't grown kind of long in the tooth. You can tell you're long in the tooth when your existing members stay with you, but nobody new wants to join.
Mm. So Robbie, I'm curious, and this may be more of a logistics question, but you think of all these great things that you can offer your guests, and is there a tendency to want to get that all out there right away? Like, I've got these 10 things and I want to get everything out there, to be, benefits of the membership program, but is it better to kind of drip them out and say, here's one thing and then here's something else? I'm just curious, like from that offering standpoint, what does that look like?
Yeah. So there's a few, it's a really good question. There's a few different ways of thinking about it. So one of them is, what is the acquisition benefit that gets someone to join? So sometimes you kind of want to throw out all the benefits and say, we have this and we have this, and if you're young and if you're old and if you're this and that and all of it. And it's kind of overwhelming and people don't recognize themselves in the offer. So you want to get really clear on who your promise is to and what is the headline benefit. That all the headline benefit has to do is get the right person to join who's going to get the value for the long term. And then you want to think about your engagement and retention benefits, which are the benefits that are going to make you a habit, that are going to make them say, it's not why I joined, but it's why I keep coming back, or it's why I show preference for this as a way of celebrating versus other options that I have. So you want to break it up that way. And then your other question, I think, alludes to over time. Do you want to, if you have a whole bunch of new features or new content, do you do it all at once? And I would say it depends, but generally in subscription models, you do want to keep dripping it out on a regular cadence, because you want your members, if they describe your offering, you want them to say, there's always something new there. I don't really have to, I don't have to threaten to leave and come back. There's always something new. And whenever I compare it to other things, it always is on the cutting edge. It always is the best one.
And that something new doesn't always need to be a large CapEx investment on behalf of the provider or the operator. It could be a new way of recognizing loyalty, because ultimately we're talking about the loyalty when we really break this down from that membership and that subscription offering of adding continual value, likely based off of what they already have to offer, what they might already be, charging in some aspect if they're not a member, if they're not a subscriber. What about going beyond, I would say, that bullet point list that kind of makes up or quantifies the value of it? So if we're looking at, theme parks, we're usually talking about year-round access, or, unlimited access, come whenever you want, discounts off of food and beverage, discounts off of retail, maybe discounts for friends and family, things like that. What do you recommend, or what do you see as the best providers of membership that go beyond that initial list to really make people feel more connected to what they are a member of?
Yeah. So this gets back to kind of making that forever promise tangible. So a lot of times what I see companies do is they say, we need to have a subscription. And then they say, what value can we layer in? And they make a list of features and benefits. And then they think about how feasible they are, and maybe how desirable they are. And they just throw them in. So, and then what happens is you're like, well, this benefit is great for families with kids. And this benefit is great for teenagers. And this benefit is great for people who want to celebrate a major milestone here because they have a history with us. And then what you end up having is kind of this mishmash of offer that doesn't perfectly meet anyone's needs. So what I would say is, first of all, you want to be really clear about who the offer's for. So you might, and you can always layer in more. Like Amazon started and it was really just about books. And so if you weren't a big reader, it wasn't a great site. It wasn't a great offering. Over time, they've become a purveyor of everything. And it's really good for anybody who wants free shipping. And now they have other stuff. But when they started, they really focused on one group. So I would say when you start your subscription, you might have a season pass, but you might say, we have this subscription. It's a year-round offering, and it's for our neighbors, the people that live closest, or it's for our VIP guests who only are able to come once or twice a year and want the best of everything. But you want to really, or this is for teenagers who have more flexible schedules and come during the week, or whatever it is, and then you can optimize for them. So I think that's part of it. The other thing is, While discounts are often a trigger, a headline benefit that get people to join, because it's really easy to do the math in your head and say, okay, well, if I come 2 times and I get 25% off, and we also eat lunch there, boom, this is a good financial decision. That's not going to keep them. What's going to keep them are those retention benefits, which are often about higher order benefits on like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like sense of belonging and a sense of being held in high regard. So belonging is they recognize you. Welcome back, Robbie. Do you want the usual? Do you want, and being held in high regard is because you're a member, we're going to, because we recognize all that, we recognize you as a member. So we're giving you this special thing, or we recognize how many times, you've been here 100 times. So you get to go to the front of the line, that kind of thing, which is about recognition for your contribution or your achievement.
And Robbie, I would also imagine, Josh and I were talking about this just before you came on, that there's also sort of that feeling of belonging when you say, I'm a member of the Six Flags Club, right? And you can say that and be proud of that, or, I'm a member of Zoo Miami or whatever it is, because now there's a little cachet to that and you get recognized that. And that's not even a benefit that you can put in a bullet point list, right? That's more of a I belong and I feel like I'm special because I'm part of this larger group.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a few ways of doing that. I talk about this concept of a super user. And a super user is someone who goes beyond just being a best member. A best member is somebody who uses your products and services regularly and well, gets tremendous value for it, and recognizes and is willing to pay for that value. They're just like a good customer, right? They may never, but a super user goes beyond that. They're that, plus they also contribute their own time and resources to the well-being of your organization. So these are people who give you feedback, who write reviews, who bring their friends, who, want to be insiders. And you can also create value for them. That's when you talk about being special. An example is Salesforce, the software as a service company. They have this club, I guess you'd call it, called the MVPs, the Salesforce MVPs. And those are their most valuable people. And they're people who are great customers who also contribute their own time to onboard new members. They're referenceable customers. They participate on all the user groups. They're willing to speak at events. Basically, they're doing all that stuff, which makes Salesforce more valuable for new members. And they're not getting paid for any of it. They're just doing it for the recognition and the sense of belonging, of being with the other MVPs, enjoying each other's company, and being publicly recognized for their contributions and their achievements, maybe through a t-shirt, maybe through standing in the front of the room, and maybe the occasional perk, but not a perk with financial value, a perk that's only valuable to somebody who really cares about the brand.
So what are some of those ways to foster those super users?
The first thing is to define them. So for your business, your organization, say who are the super users we already know? And usually, for going concerns, I would imagine that any zoo, any theme park, they could probably name 5 people they know who are super users of their organization, right? They'd say, oh, Mike, and he always is the first in line, and he always comes, and he's always calling us, and he's always giving us feedback, and he knows the names of all the animals, or he's been on this ride 1,000 times. So you already know who that is. And then you want to take a step back and look at the list and say, what are these people doing that make them super users, right? And so then you start to get a definition of a super user is someone who, whatever it is, right? They use up all their guest passes. They always fill out our survey cards. They're really patient with us when we have a problem, and they explain it to others, like on website. When people are complaining, they're the ones that go out and say, hey, that's not fair. And you have your list. Once you know what your list includes, you think about how to kind of provide bumpers so that other people go down that same path. What makes someone a super user? How do you create one? And usually you're going to do it through the onboarding process. So for example, you might say at some point, wow, you've been here 3 times. We're having a focus group. Do you want to come join us? It's only for our most loyal and engaged members. We've noticed that you've been here 5 times in the last 3 months. We'd love to include you in this special group. Right? So you start to build out that path to create your next super user.
You know, Robbie, part of what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're thinking about a membership model, you really actually want to start kind of narrow with who that person might be that you're trying to attract, rather than the wide net, you know, which I think is probably what some people think. We'll get everybody to subscribe and that'll be our income, right? But you're really saying start narrow and then really let that build over time.
Yeah, especially if you're a going concern. So if you already have gate revenue and you already have season ticket holders and you already have, bundled packages, you might start by saying, what's a group that we really want to honor with a membership, right? And like I said, it might be neighbors, it might be teenagers, it might be people that want the, luxury experience, the best of the best. But you figure out who those people are and you optimize. And you have one offering. Right. It's so tempting to have like 27 offerings, right? 3 tiers plus 18 different add-ons. And what happens, two problems with that. One of them is when pricing gets complicated, trust goes down. Because if I have to be an expert on your pricing structure, I'm going to assume that it's possible to make a mistake. And if I feel like I can make a mistake and buy the wrong thing, I'm going to have my antennae up because I don't trust you. So that's the first thing. So if you're, a subscription is all about trust. And then here you are making it hard to trust. And you're always thinking, wait, do I need to upgrade or downgrade? Do I need to cancel? What do I need to do? I don't want to pay too much. And the other thing is you create unnecessary complexity. Your first guess on what your subscription should look like or what your membership should be is probably not going to be quite right. And if you go out with 3 different offerings and 7 different add-ons, it's going to be hard to figure out why things aren't working. And it's going to be hard to change all of them. It's like, it's when you have a lot of SKUs, it just becomes too complicated to figure it out. So start with one, get it right, and then either add more value that makes more people interested in it, which is like what American Express has done with their platinum membership, or add actual separate tiers with different levels of value.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that process, are you talking about when you are starting a membership program, or is that on an ongoing basis? Because I would imagine then there's a balance between not having too many options, but also making sure that you do have the right option for the right demographic.
Right. So over time, you'll probably expand your number of offerings and have maybe a higher level of complexity. But even in those cases, you want to make it really easy for somebody to know which one they are. So for example, I keep going back to Amazon today for some reason, but they have a lot of different options to get Amazon Prime, but most of them are based on something that you can easily and quickly recognize which one's for you. So for example, they have for students and retirees and people living in certain markets. So those options aren't all available to me. Only one of those is available to me, but they do have different things for different groups. So what you want to do is, as you expand, you want to keep it as simple and clear as possible so someone can say, oh, I get it. That's the offer for people who are like me.
Yeah, and then once you get them in, as you've been talking about, you've got that special person that you need to continue building for, right? And build that. I like how you say you put the bumpers. It's like bowling, right? You put the bumpers on so you keep them in that lane. What are some things that you advise people on or have them look for if they say, my membership program just isn't working? Like it's not giving me the revenue I want or the members or whatever. So what are some of those signs that the system isn't working?
Yeah. So if somebody says that to me, like, hey, we tried membership or we tried a subscription, it's not working, I'll usually ask them some questions, try to figure out where the problem is. So sometimes it's not working because nobody's joining. So that either means that the offer isn't compelling or that you're not reaching the right people, right? So we'd say, okay, who are you reaching, right? Oh, well, actually, nobody, we aren't sending this out to anybody. It's only on our website and it's only in this lower right-hand corner. You're like, oh, well, maybe that's why, right? Or you say, well, you look at the offer, right? What are you promising them? And sometimes the problem is people don't understand the offer, or they don't believe the offer is as good as you say. Or they understand, and those two are about communication. Sometimes you can do a free trial to help people understand and recognize that the value is real if they don't understand the value. Sometimes it's because there's too much work required it's too big of a commitment. And again, you might have a free trial as a way to get them in to see. So for example, if they have to set stuff up, they're like, well, I don't want to do that. Sometimes they say, I understand exactly what you're offering, and I don't think it's that great. Then you have a product problem, right? So if I say I have this fabulous subscription, there's one ride and it's $20 a month and you have to subscribe for a year at the beginning. And then you can go monthly. People might say, well, I understand that. I see the ride right there. I know exactly that's a fun ride, but I'm not willing to spend $20 a month, for a year, 240 bucks for one ride. That's an hour away, right? That's just not a good deal for me. So then you have to change the product. And then sometimes so those are all kind of before someone even signs up. If you see people sign up, join, and turn around and leave, it's either because they were using you for your free trial, right? They said, I'm going to use a free trial, go in once and never come back, or the extra low first day price. Or because they walked in and they said, I thought this was family friendly, and I see, bars and liquor stores and thrill rides everywhere. This is not for me. This is not, I misunderstood. So there you might have a communication problem. And then inside the part, then so that's all product market fit stuff. And then the last one is what I think of as an operational issue, which is offer was great. I'm the right person. I signed up. I have all the good intentions of staying, but then the rides were broken and the food lines were so long. You didn't deliver on the promise because you had technical issues. And then it's a product problem, but it's an operations versus conceptual. Mm-hmm. So that's usually, and then if the problem is they're staying for 6 months and then canceling, or they're staying for 2 months and then canceling, then usually it's because they're using up the value. Your offering's too small to justify forever.
Got it.
I love how this crosses departmental lines, that this is not, purely a marketing function from the development and management of memberships and subscriptions, but very much you tied in the operational component of it, that everything else I might check every other box, but then when they're actually using it and when they are the actual going through the user experience or the guest experience, that they're not seeing the value from that standpoint, whereas the price was right, the offering was right, and all of that. So I find that very interesting, and I think just a really important distinction and kind of lesson for for everyone out there, that marketing and operations very much need to be working hand in hand when talking about providing how it is you're going to deliver the experience to them.
Yeah. And the product team. Absolutely. And the product team, because sometimes what happens is, let's say that the leadership says, we need to attract more families. And so marketing creates this program, the Family Pass, right? And they're marketing like crazy to families. And the product team comes out with thrill ride after thrill ride, right? And they're working on beautiful bars, right? You're like, wait, if we're really going to go after families, that actually has an impact on the product team and on where we invest. And a lot of times, not just in theme parks and attractions, the product team sort of feels like we can go and do whatever it was we wanted to do. And marketing just build something around it and use nice words. But they really have to, what you're promising, you have to be able to deliver on what you've promised as well.
Yeah, and Josh, you bring up the marketing and operations, and Robbie, I love how you say they've all got to work together. I remember back working at a theme park, and we had you bring in a can of Coke, right, for a discount, and it was all over every place, but nobody had told operations, and when people got there was no place to number one, put all the Cokes, right, all the empty cans of Coke, and number two, there was no way to actually record the discount in the POS system. So So I definitely see what you're saying in terms of that communication.
Yeah. And everybody has to work, especially in a membership model, everyone has to work together because you're relying on that customer staying for a long time. So it's very different than if you're transactional. If you're saying, look, we're only going to get this person once and they may never come back again. So let's get them to spend as much as they can right here. And it doesn't really matter if it leaves a bad taste in their mouth because we may never see them again anyway. It's a really different way that you would structure everything than if your goal was to get them to make it a habit, right? So if it's a habit, you might say, well, we actually are trying to optimize this for people to come every Tuesday night. We have member night every Tuesday night, and we actually want people to come every time. Well, then you probably have to customize what you offer for Tuesday nights, and everybody has to be aware, and you have to be open Tuesday nights. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of pieces that all have to fit together, and everybody has to be working on the retention goal, not just the acquisition goal.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that there's one thing too that we should cover, and I feel like we've been using the word subscription and membership somewhat interchangeably. But can you share kind of what some of the differences are and why people usually associate them together based on their common attributes?
Yeah. So subscription is a pricing decision. It's an automated recurring payment. And that's all it is. It's a tactic. It's a pricing choice. Membership is, first of all, you have a membership mindset as an organization, which is the organization is treating this group of people like they're going to be around for a long time. And since they're going to be around for a long time, what are the implications for the products, for the way we talk to them, for the way we treat them, for the way we charge them? So you can have a membership mindset or even a membership kind of organization and not charge subscription. You could have a membership that people choose each year whether or not they want to sign up, and you have to opt in every year. It's not opt out. It's not a subscription. Apple for many years didn't have any subscriptions, but a lot of people felt a sense of membership where they said, from the time I bought my first, I can't remember the first computer, my first Lisa or my first iMac, I knew this was the company for me. And when I picked my phone, it had to be an Apple product. And when I picked my tablet, it had to be an Apple product because all those products work together. Even though each one of those decisions was a transaction, there was no subscription, it still was very much like a membership because Apple was really only interested in attracting the people that were all in forever.
Yeah, Robbie, I really like how you talk about the membership mindset. And a lot of thoughts are going through my head, from the times when I was working at different parks. And, I'm thinking, obviously, the departments we've talked about, marketing, operations, product development, but, merchandise, maintenance, food and beverage, they could all be part of this process, right? And I'll be thinking about what do we specifically do? What do we do in tech services? What do we do in food and beverage that is going to create an environment where people want to keep coming back? So I'm curious how you kind of transform an organization from a pay one price model to a membership mindset.
Yeah. So if you're a going concern, you're an attraction and you have, the gate tickets and the season tickets and the other things, and you're trying to move to a membership mindset, probably you're going to start with a small team off in the corner that is experimenting with it, right? Because you don't want to risk all the revenue. You don't want to risk cannibalization. You don't want to risk, having to retrain everybody 5 different times on what our processes are. You don't want to invest in a whole new tech system, right? So small team, paper clips and bubble gum, holding everything together, experimenting to learn. And that's, my book is divided into 3 parts. And the first one is launch. And it's all about that phase where you're just being really kind of nitty gritty, make it work, not scalable. But then the second phase is scaling. When you figure out, we've got something here and we want to bring it across the whole organization, and we're actually going to be optimized around this membership mindset, then you really have to think about the culture of the organization, that everybody's thinking long-term relationship, that the metrics that you judge people on are about how long someone stays, how engaged they are. One of the things that you do in a membership is you want to expose them to the best ways to get value, because you want them to get value, because if they don't get value, they're probably going to cancel. So, what does that mean for, the tech team? What does that mean for the way that you design the layout? What does that mean for the food? What are the reasons that people don't come back? How do we solve those? How do we drive frequency? So there's a cultural piece, a mindset piece. There's new metrics. There's new offerings themselves. And so that's actually like a pretty major transformation, cultural rollout. That I've done with several organizations where we're actually like going into every department and we're investing in technology infrastructure, and we're really following that whole member journey to make sure that all the parts of the organization understand how their roles change.
Yeah.
So as this gets implemented and after launch and as it continues to scale, I would imagine that there's some sort of data collection and a feedback loop that comes back to the operators or the marketers or the decision makers to continually refine and make sure that the offering is best suited for the applicable demographics and that those additional options are layered in appropriately. But how do you avoid refining too much to the detriment of consumer understanding? Does that make sense? Like how often should you change or update the offerings or the pricing based off the data that you're collecting?
Yeah. So in the early days, you might have to do it a lot because you're still learning. That's why you do it off in the corner and you do a lot of research and a lot of, experimentation. And you get, I have a lot of processes that you can do to kind of test and experiment without upsetting the apple cart of your core business. But once you're kind of in full operating mode, you don't really want to change the offer more than you have to. And the reason is that anytime I change the pricing, people go back and, the whole point of a membership model is they take off their consumer hat, put on a member hat, say, you're the way I'm going to solve my problem forever. And I'm not going to look for alternatives. You raise the price. They're like, I'm a consumer again. How much was it? Maybe I should cancel. How many times did we go last year? Oh, not very many. What else is out there? Maybe this year, instead of, a theme park, maybe we should join the zoo, right? So you don't want to give them a reason to kind of take off their blinders and reconsider alternatives. You just want it to always be good. So you want to be layering things in a way that is not disruptive to the experience. So a good example of that, well, theme parks do that pretty well. Gyms do that really well. Where it's like, well, last year, 5 years ago, there was a lot of jazzercise and now there's a lot of, cross training. They used to have, a ski machine and now they have a climber. And you don't even really notice. It's like one day an old machine's gone and the next day there's a new machine, and it's all so smooth that you hardly even notice it. But if you look at what things looked like 5 years ago, you say, wow, it was totally different 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what you're aiming for. In terms of raising your prices, sometimes you have to do it. I've noticed that in nonprofits, if the reason for raising prices is so that we can continue to do our good work, a lot of times members are not as price sensitive because they're thinking about it kind of as a mishmash between philanthropy and actual, valuable benefits that they would pay for. But when it's a pure for-profit organization, your members are going to be very aware when you raise your price, and you risk losing some, you risk some bad feedback. Sometimes you get bad feedback and they all stay. And that's okay. Like Adobe, when they switched from box software to subscription software, people complained a lot because the net cost went up for a lot of people. But the only people who left were the moonlighters, the amateurs, anybody who was a graphic designer working for an agency or a company where probably their boss was paying, their company was paying, and where they really needed the best features. They were all fine. They all stayed. So when you raise prices or change prices, just know what you're going to expect and be ready for that. It will be disruptive.
And I would also think it goes back to knowing who your target is, right? If you know that you are Adobe and you're looking for the people who are, true graphic designers, then that's who you're going to be marketing to. And that's who that change is going to be really probably more beneficial for.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're in this world that we're talking about, if you're optimizing something for people who say, I want everything to be amazing. I want the parking to be easy. I don't want to wait in any lines. I want to get the most for my time. They might be more willing to take a price increase than somebody who's, let's say, enjoying the benefits that are mostly around cost savings. Mm-hmm. Right? So you want to really know your audience, and it's always worthwhile to kind of do a kind of pro forma analysis and a sensitivity analysis of what you think is going to happen when you raise the price. Who's going to be upset? Who's going to stay? So that, you may still be surprised, but it's just good to even ask yourself the question before you do it.
Yeah,
sure. So one thing that I'm interested about too, and you sent out an email about this a few days ago, and it was specifically about Netflix and canceling subscriptions who had been inactive for over a year. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember that correctly. Why is that a good business decision? That sounds like a lot of potential revenue lost from that standpoint.
Yeah. Well, So what Netflix did, as you said, Josh, is they said anybody who has been subscribing and not getting value for a year or more, meaning 12 periods of not using any Netflix services or logging into their account at all, we will automatically cancel that subscription for them. And so first of all, I would guess, I don't have inside information, but I would guess that that's a very, very small group of people that have been paying and not subscribing and not calling for a year. So it's small. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the big risk that Netflix took was many, many years ago when they said cancel anytime, right? Netflix only allows you to subscribe month by month. There are no annual subscriptions. There are no lock-ins. There are no special deals if you're willing to commit longer. And a lot of people thought that was crazy. Like if you could cancel anytime, wouldn't you be more likely to cancel than if we locked you in? And what they've found is that when you let people go and you make it easy for them to leave, it creates a lot of goodwill and a lot of trust, which of course is key to a subscription. And also it increases the likelihood of them coming back. So they have a lot of members, maybe some of us even, who, we subscribed for 3 years and then things got really busy and we said, I'm not even watching anymore. You cancel, you come back a year later or 2 years later for House of Cards. So that's also really important in a lot of subscriptions, and certainly in the world of theme parks and attractions where, people might say, this year we did this attraction, we've done this for 3 years in a row. Next year we're going to try something different, or next week we're taking a big trip, so we don't want to have keep our membership. You want them to come back. You want them to feel good about leaving, so they feel good about coming back. And at least Netflix has proven out that it makes business sense. And anecdotally, I've seen it with a lot of other organizations that the ones that make it easy to leave seem to do the best with word of mouth and the ability to get people back.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the ease of leaving seems like for the people who are setting it up, we don't want them to leave. We're going to lose that money, right?
Yeah.
But I think the goodwill and the willingness to come back, I think, probably outweighs any of that incremental revenue that they might be losing.
Yeah, exactly. I think the metric that these organizations care about, I know it's a metric Netflix cares about, is lifetime customer value, right? How much does one person pay over their lifetime with you? And if you think of it that way and they leave, you say, well, I want to make sure they come back so that I can increase my lifetime value. But when you have that mindset, that lifetime, when you're focused on lifetime value instead of quarterly revenue, it's a very different mindset as we've discussed. And something that's kind of interesting is that businesses that are closely held businesses, family-owned businesses, are often, not always, but often better at doing this than publicly owned businesses that have quarterly, very aggressive quarterly numbers. And also businesses where people tend to stay for a long time as employees versus businesses where people are kind of up or out. And the reason is, if I'm the CEO and I'm told that if I hit this number by the end of this year, I get a huge bonus, I think to myself, I'm going to do whatever I need to do, even if I totally alienate my customer base, to hit this number, because I'm going to go on to the next job next year and I'm going to ride out into the sunset on a great 2020. If I own the business, I can't kill my golden goose. I have to keep taking care of it, taking care of my customers. So, sometimes I've just seen anecdotally different behaviors. You can almost predict what's going to happen based on what the compensation structure is for the CEO and what the ownership structure is.
So is there that value then, I guess this is getting more into kind of logistics, of Netflix only having that monthly option, not having that, special deal lock in for a year, and basically being the opposite of, cable or your phone bill, essentially,
Right.
Versus having, incentives for an annual subscription that, might commit you to a full year. Is there more loyalty because there is that ease of being able to leave when I want to?
Yeah. So sometimes people ask me, should we have an annual at all? And I think for a lot of organizations, annual makes a lot of sense. I think that it might even make sense for Netflix, although they do this because it's a big point that they want to make, that they can cancel at any time, everybody. But But in a lot of organizations, if you know you're going to stay for many, many years, sometimes paying monthly is more of a hassle than it's worth. And you want to kind of just set it and forget it. And if they'll give you a discount to honor your loyalty, so much the better, right? So if I'm going to join the Alumni Association of my university, right, and I know I'm going to stay a member probably till I die, it's easier for me. Honestly, I'd like to just sign one check and pay for a lifetime membership, but annual is going to be better because I'm not likely to cancel. I've made this decision.
Yeah. Robbie, I have one question sort of around the buyer's, I guess, psyche, if you will, because you've talked about as they change from, if you raise your price and they put on their consumer hat and things like that. So what do you see, like, because you were just talking about that long-term relationship, what do you see in terms of membership from the consumer standpoint, their behavior? Are people wanting to be members? Do they balk at it from their side? I'm just curious kind of what you see from there that might help an operator decide, is this right for us?
Yeah. So when it works well, when you have product market fit, in other words, when the promise that you're making aligns with the promise that they want you to make, and the offering delivers on that promise, I think consumers love it. It just makes your life so much easier. You don't have to worry about anything. And you hear people talking about how much they love, whatever, Spotify. It's all the music I need, everything audio I need, and I don't have to think about it. It's great. I don't have to choose which song I want to buy. So it can be really amazing. But we're operating in a time right now of subscription fatigue. There are everything. I told you 5 years ago, people didn't get subscription. Today, everybody is doing subscription. You can subscribe to your heavy equipment. You can subscribe to your, Porsche has a subscription for cars. You can subscribe to get your, your medications mailed to your home, or your hairspray, or your snack bars. Everything is subscription now. And a lot of times there's not a product market fit, right? So it doesn't make sense that you should be subscribing to this thing, but you're forced to. And that creates a tremendous amount of frustration among consumers. So the first piece of advice I'd have is to make sure that if you're offering a membership and you're requiring a subscription, that it makes sense to people and it really is the best offer. One of my friends has this book, Jeannie Bliss, and it's called "Would You Do That to Your Mother?"
Heard of that?
So if you think you've heard it, it's a great book. It's a great book and it's a great title. If you say, yeah, this is a great offering for my mother, my next door neighbor, somebody who you have a forever transaction with already, where they're going to find you if they feel cheated. If you don't feel like they're going to love it, you probably don't have product market fit. And then, also this, hiding the cancel button. If people look at your offering and they see in the fine print that it's going to be very hard to get out of this, that's another issue as well. So people are much more sophisticated about subscription now, and they know what best practice, like they've all experienced Netflix and they've all experienced Amazon Prime. And so if you don't treat them well, or your onboarding process is clunky, you can't say to them, but we're like this very small, family run business, and we have this legacy software, which makes it impossible for us to treat you well. Your consumer's not going to care, because they're going to say, why can't you do it like Amazon does it? Or why can't you do it like Netflix does it?
And I think that's a really important point too, is because regardless of what industry we're in, and if we're in the attractions industry, just because we don't necessarily compete directly with Amazon or Netflix, that the level of convenience that is required to do business with you, that's what they are comparing you to. And in all capacities too, for doing a transaction, was this as easy as subscribing to Netflix or subscribing to Amazon Prime? And I mean, everything else with the organization. So I think and that's a great point too, about minimizing the subscription fatigue from that standpoint with the product market fit. And that's, something that is just so incredibly important to be aware of and to consider. So, Robbie, this has been a really interesting interview and a really interesting conversation with you. As we wrap this up here, if people wanted to learn more about you, or if they wanted to get in touch with you directly, or if they wanted to buy your book, where would you send them?
So the easiest place is to come to my website, RobbieKellmanBaxter.com. It has links to the books. It has links to download, some goodies. That's probably the best place. You can buy my book anywhere books are sold, independent bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, available pretty much everywhere. And for your audience, if you go to RobbieKellmanBaxter.com, that's my website, /audience, I have some goodies that they can download. Chapter 8 from the book, which is all about culture, which you had brought up as a pretty important topic, as well as membership manifesto and some process visual, some slides to kind of see some of these ideas in visual form.
That's awesome. We will make sure to include all that in the show notes to make sure that that everyone can get there easily. So as we wrap this up, Robbie, any final lasting thoughts for our audience, listeners, viewers, etc.?
I think, the most important thing is if you're kind of overwhelmed right now and you're saying, where do we even begin? I think the most important thing is to get in touch with what your forever promise is and who you're making it to. And then look at your offering and look at your, the experience for your customers and say, are there ways that we can take into account what that promise is and what those goals are and make this better? Forget subscription pricing, forget a new billing system, forget all of that complexity. Just start there with, do we have a member mindset for the people we serve? Are we truly trying to build a forever transaction with them? And then you can take it from there.
That's great. That's great. What a great way to kind of wrap this up. So Robbie, Josh and I want to thank you really much, very much for your time today. It's been, like you said, a wonderful conversation. I know I've learned a lot. I'm going to go to that website and download all those audience resources right now. Want to thank everybody who's listening. And remember, we are all
Attraction Pros.
We'll get that right someday. Thank you very much, Robbie. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for another great episode of the Attraction Pros podcast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to drop us a line on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and make sure to follow us on all the social channels.
And make sure you've subscribed to the show so you can get the latest episodes every single week. Also, if you're new to the show, be sure to check out all the great episodes and guests we've featured in the past.
And if you want to learn more about Matt and Josh and check out the best articles for you to operate your attraction most successfully, be sure to visit us at AttractionPros.com.